Hi, I'm Kim from Social Work Your Life. Welcome. Today we're gonna step into the continuation of the student loan problem. So where we left off on the last time I talked about student loans, I had received a letter from Mohila that stated my student loans weren't being forgiven because I was outside of the window and because I wasn't currently working for a nonprofit. The form I had sent in that I had been told would be accepted wasn't accepted, and my student loans weren't being forgiven. And I was like, fine, I'll come up with plan B and plan C and plan D, and that I was going to continue to manifest how to get my student loans forgiven. So I did. I took it to my cushion, my meditation cushion, and I sat a lot. But I sit a lot anyway, so I would just get into the vortex and I would get myself into that big, nice, open and airy, spacious space, and I would just ask the universe to forgive the student loans. And it was like, whenever it happens, or even if I was the one who paid the $86,000 to get rid of them, that's fine. I already paid $75,000, another $86,000, right? The first amount of money I ever make off of Social Work Your Life, right, will basically go to student loans. That's sort of what I was thinking, and I was talking to the universe about that, and I'm like, however you want to do it, universe, I'm open to it, but I'm just going to stay open, I'm going to stay spacious, and I'm going to allow anything just to come in that needs to come in. And so I didn't shut down. I didn't get negative. I didn't say they're never getting forgiven. I mean, there would have been moments where I would be like, oh, my student loans, right? But I was hopeful, and I'm like, well, however it happens, however they get gone, I'm okay with that. I had talked to my business coach, and I said the first $100,000 I make, I'll just put to the student loans and put them to bed. And she's like, that's a great idea. And so I'm like, but I'm working on manifesting a different answer. But if that's the answer, that's the answer. The universe is going to give me the money, and I'll just pay it off like that. I've already paid him off once with the $75,000 I've already paid. But, I'll just get rid of them. And so I was just living my life, working really hard on, maintaining a really good attitude, working really hard on keeping my vibration up, which means making sure I'm relatively happy and making sure I'm doing okay and doing things that make me happy and trying really hard not to do things that don't make me happy, right? And so I was living in that space of, let's see what happens, right? Meditating, going to work, creating Social Work Your Life. I just got myself into that zone. And so one day I came home from work and I walked home and I got to my door, and there were 2 packages of food there because I get food delivered because of, where I am and my food things that are happening over here. And I picked up the packages one at a time because they're pretty heavy, and I brought them back down to my condo, and I unpacked them, put them in the refrigerator, and put the ice boxes, put the ice and packed it all back up, took off all the labels, shredded them, and did everything I normally do, right? Totally normal day. It was a totally normal day in my world. And I walked the packages out to the garbage. And as I went by, there was mail in my mailbox, and I was like, oh, mail in the mailbox. And I was like, but they're letters, and I normally don't get letters. I normally get spammy flyers and catalogs. I normally don't get letters. And I was like, oh, letters in the mailbox. And I was thinking they'd be bank statements, or I don't really get bank statements. I get those offers for life insurance or I don't know, ooh, sign up for this credit card, right? That kind of stuff in your mailbox. So I walk past my mailbox and I flip through it, and inside are 2 what appear to be letters from the government. They're the IRS checks. Now, I haven't had an IRS check in a while because I get direct deposit, but I was like, that's a letter with a check from the government in my mailbox. And I was like, huh, interesting. So then I walk out to the garbage with my, I walk out with my boxes to the garbage. I throw them in the dumpsters, and then I come back in, and as I'm going by, I'm like, I'm not leaving checks in my mailbox. I'm just not going to do that. So I pick them up and I bring them inside and I put them on the counter. And I think about it for a couple of seconds and I open them, and they're from the U.S. Department of Education. And there's two of them, one for a certain amount and one for another amount. And I put it all together and I was like, there are two loans that are consolidated inside of Mahila. One is bigger than the other. I was like, this is really interesting. And so I didn't have time at that moment to like go on the Mahila website and see, is this really what I think it is? So I go out to dinner, because I do every Friday night, and I met up with my mom at the same restaurant we go to every Friday night. It's a thing we do. And I get to the restaurant, and I sit down, and Mom goes, I had the luckiest day. And I was like, really? And she's like, yes. And I was like, well, what made your day lucky? She's like, well, first, I parked in Philadelphia, and when I got out of my car, I found a penny. I was like, okay. And she goes, and then I checked my signage and I wasn't parked from there to corner. And she's like, and all the other signs made it seem like I was fine. So I just like left my car. And I was like, Mom, tell me you did not get towed. She's like, I didn't get towed. I'm like, did you get a boot? She's like, I didn't get a boot. I'm like, okay. So she goes and she tells me all about her day and how she met up with her cousin and she went to the art museum and she went to all these places, and then she went back to her cousin's house and had tea with them in the afternoon, and she just like spent the whole day in the city, and she gets back to her car, which is still there and doesn't have a ticket, and she was parked in a 1 hour only zone. Like she's only allowed to park there for an hour, and she was there for like 6. She's like, it was the luckiest day. It's like, yeah, you really did have a lucky day. And she goes, and I felt so lucky I went and bought a lottery ticket. I'm like, that seems like a really smart move to do. Yeah. And so then she goes, how is your day lucky? And I like put my head in my hands and I leaned forward and I grabbed it and I grabbed my face kind of like this. And I looked right at her and I was like, I don't know how to process this. Like, if this is really what's happening, I don't know how to process this. And she's like, well, what happened? And I was like, well, when I came home from the work today, there were the 2 boxes, brought them downstairs, told her all about, unpacking them, going out to the mailbox, coming back in, opening up the packages, and how there was like $7,500 in checks on my kitchen counter. And she's like, are you for sure they're for real? She's like, there's those checks that people send you in the mail that are like, if you like, the money's not really yours, and if you like cash the check, you're saying like you owe them all these things, or you have to give the money back, or like there's like contingencies on it. I'm like, Mom, I'm pretty sure they're from the government. They look just like IRS checks. She's like, yes, but you have to read them very carefully. I was like, I will read them really carefully. And I was like, in fact, when I deposit them, I will deposit them into a side account. I will not deposit them into my regular checking account. She's like, oh, that's a really smart idea. She's like, but don't deposit them if they say that you have to. And I would cut her off and I was like, Mom, if they say that I like have to give up my firstborn child who doesn't exist, or my right leg, which does exist, I'm not going to do it. Like, I like my leg and I don't have a kid to give them. So yes, I understand what you're saying. So I came home and I looked at the checks again, and I don't know, I might have sent her a copy of them. Like, I might have sent her a picture of each of the 2 checks. And I sent them to her, and she's like, where are they printed? And I was like, they were printed in Kentucky. Well, she had just been to like the Federal Reserve on a tour where it taught her all about money and all the things that happen on money and all the like what $100 bill looks like, so you can't counterfeit it, like different ways that they've like put counterfeiting blocks on the $100 bill. And so she had a whole tour on like the Reserve, and she's like, ooh, Kentucky's one of our printing sites. She's like, I think this might be for real. And I was like, yeah, Mom, I think it is for real. Like, they're from the Department of Education. So I like hang up with her and I go online to the Mahila website, and I spend like an hour or so, I'm sure I spent longer than an hour, scooting around the site and looking at the same information over and over and over again, because there are a number of like your account tabs, but like It's all the same information told in different ways. And you need 120 qualifying payments to qualify for public service loan forgiveness, PSLF, public service loan forgiveness. You need 120 qualifying payments. And I sent in, when I was teaching in Maryland during 2007 to 2012. And I had already done 7 years and a quarter, 7 years and 3 months, 7 years and 4 months of payments I had already had established. So I sent them basically what if they counted the 7 years or 6 years of teaching, whatever it was, at Cecil County, Maryland in Northeast. If they counted that, I would have had 13 years of payments. And you only need 10. That's where the 120 come from. It's 10 years at 12 months. It's 120 qualifying payments. So I looked on the website, and the website said I had 141 qualifying payments. And there's like a grid that, like, it's kind of a silly grid. There's a line in the middle that says done. And on this side, it's like how many you've made. And on this side, it's how many you have to go. So for a while there, I had 120 to make and I had 120 to go. But then if I made, let me make this simple on myself. If I made 20 payments, I had 20 done and I had 100 to go. So this gets smaller and this gets bigger, although you're actually meeting in the middle. So I had, So it said I had 141 qualifying payments out of 120. And it said that my balance was a negative 1,400. Well, last time I checked, my balance was like $86,000. So, and when so for those of you who have credit cards, when you have a balance that you owe, it's a positive number. And then if you've given the credit card company too much money, it turns into a negative number. It's kind of a lovely thing to look at your bank your credit card balance and know that you've, like, not that you want them to have your money and them to be sitting on the interest of the money you gave them, but to know that you don't have an outstanding balance with them. And then if you, like, overpaid them by like $50, it'll say negative 50 because that's money that you overpaid them. So Mahila had a negative $1,400 sitting on there. So I texted my accountant and I said, I know it's Friday night at 9 p.m. and I know there's no such thing as an accounting emergency, but I think I'm having one. And she was like, hold on, I'm putting my kids to bed. Give me a moment. And then she texts me back and she's like, yeah. And she, like, logs into the Mohila website for herself because she has access because she's my accountant. And she looked at it and she goes, it's possible. Oh, no, she didn't log in. I take that back. She didn't have access. I correct myself. I think I printed pages of it and I sent them over to her so she could see them. And she was like, yeah, it looks to me like it might be. She's like, you'll have to, like, figure this out. And so then I also sent a message to my financial guy. And he got back to me the next morning and he's like, wait, what? How? And I called him and he responded with, like, I'm getting dressed, literally, like, I'll have to call you back. So he calls me back and I was like, are you wearing socks? And he's like, yeah, I'm wearing socks. And I'm like, yeah, I think my student loans are forgiven. So we went over it. And then he goes, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to call Mahila. And I was like, but I have a date in like an hour or 2 hours. He's like, I want to hear about this date. And he goes, and you're going to have to call them. So they opened at 10 and my date was at 11 or 12. My date was at 12. And so I was like, I have an hour. I can just wait on hold for a while. And if they don't get to me, they don't get to me. I'll just hang up and, like, try again some other time. So at 10 o'clock in the morning, on a Saturday morning, I called Mahila and I was like, waiting on hold, did my dishes, and then like 20 minutes later, they get on the phone with me and it's some woman. And I was like, hi, my name is Kim and I would love to check the number of qualifying payments I have. And she's like, let's do that. And so she puts me on hold. She comes back. She goes, yeah, you need 120 qualifying payments, and you have 141, and you have a refund coming to you of about $7,500 for the difference between the 120 and the 141. And I was like, yeah, I have the refund sitting on my kitchen counter. I was like, I have it already. And I was a little confused by it because I haven't received anything from Mohila stating anything. She's like, oh yeah. She's like, the money comes from one space and the letter comes from another space. And she goes, and sometimes people get the money before they get the letter. I was like, interesting. She's like, yeah, you're completely forgiven. Your student balance, she's like, I'm showing a negative 1,400 here. And I was like, yeah, whatever happens with that, whatever. And she's like, no, we'll be clearing that out and getting that to you as well. Really? She's like, yeah. She's like, you're done. Your student loans are forgiven and there's nothing more you need to do. Really? I floated. I rejoiced. I couldn't even contain myself. I was like walking around my house going, holy crap, what? And just even now remembering that moment of what it was, not just the moment when I believed my student loans were going to be forgiven over the summer, but like the moment where they actually were forgiven. It changed. I don't mean to be dramatic when I say this, but I'm being really serious when I say this. It changed everything. Everything was different. I am now, okay, so before all this happened, I used to really struggle with the release and allow part of manifestation, where you just like send it out there, you release it out to the universe, and you just allow it to happen in its time, in the perfect way. You can't put parameters on how it turns out, and you can't put parameters on when it turns out. You just have to like accept that the universe is working for you. And before the student loan forgiveness, I was like, yeah, I don't get how that works. I don't get how you just release it and allow it to happen. Like, don't you have to help? Don't you have to be involved somehow? Isn't there something you have to be doing? And yeah, there was something I had to do, right? There was work I had to do. There was a form I had to fill them out. There was like, I had to take advice from other people. I had to, call them a couple of times and make sure the form was filled out properly, and then refill it out again, and then make sure all the boxes were checked to make sure it was done correctly. There was work on my end that needed to be done in order to I had to get the 10 years of public service, right? There were a number of factors that needed to be completed in order for this grand scheme moment to occur. But I had been told it wasn't going to. And I believed the letter that said, you're not being forgiven. And I continued to work on manifestation. And now that it has come through in this unexpected, crazy, not when I expected it. In fact, I didn't expect it at all. I didn't expect it 4 days into the new year, 6 days, 7 days. It was the first Friday, I think, or the second Friday of January, depending on when the first Friday fell. I think it was the 7th of January. I did not expect my student loans to come through. That was not my expectation. And the universe was like, gift for you. And now, okay, I have to say, my poor date, he didn't know what was coming. I was in a completely different space. I'm in a completely different zone. I still am. I'm not the same at all. My energy has shifted. I feel lighter. I feel bubbly. I feel effervescent. I feel differently. I walk into work and I joke when I come in the morning. I am laughing. Yeah, the work hasn't changed. Yeah, it's still really hard. Yeah, I still sometimes get frustrated. I am, when I'm working on manifesting, I'm not worrying about the ifs. I'm not worrying about how it's going to happen. I'm not worried about when anymore. I mean, there are some things I would like now. I would like them now, please. Yes, universe, I will take them now. I will take the perfect relationship for me now, please. But when I breathe into the vortex, one, it's super easy to fall into the vortex. And two, once I'm there, it's open and it's spacious and everything is possible. And the pressure for it to happen now, it's not there. It's just not there. I feel different. And I don't want to go back to feeling the way I did before. I want to hold on to this. And I think I'm going to. I think as they would, to use a video game term, I feel like I leveled up. I think I leveled up. And that's amazing. And I wish everybody could feel a level up. It's exhilarating and exciting and makes you feel like anything is possible. And I no longer worry about releasing and allowing because it just is. It just is. So, there's my update on my student loans and the energy shift that has happened because of them. And I can breathe a little bit more. Not that I couldn't breathe before. I could. But there was always like this baggage I was carrying of $85,000 on my back. And I've dropped it. And the universe came through with a refund, which is more than I expected. I hoped, I had heard a refund was possible, but I was like, I don't know if there's enough money in the reserves. Getting my loans forgiven would be enough. As they say in the Jewish tradition, dayenu. It means it would be enough, right? It would have been enough. Forgiving the student loans, dayenu. Giving me $7,500 on top of it, dayenu. And if I ever see that $1,400 on top of that, dayenu. It would have been enough. It would have been enough. But the universe just keeps showing up. And again, and again, and again, and again. I told the universe I wanted to do this thing. I was like, can I do this thing? Please, let me do this thing. This is for another podcast. Because I'm out of time. But I will tell you the story about how the universe keeps showing up. And that'll be the title of the next one. I am so excited to be able to share this story and this adventure and how to do this for yourself. How to do this for yourself. The universe, I'm just making a note, the universe keeps showing up. All right, you guys have a fabulous rest of your day. I hope it's amazing for you. And we'll talk to you soon.